Hi everyone, this is Isa Teese.
And this is Raphael. And welcome to our fourth episode, What You Need to Know Before You Get into a Relationship. And oh boy, batten down the hatches. This is going to be a really, really cool show.
Well, I just wanted to share a quick little thing on a personal level. I went to a dog show today, and we have four little children, four-legged little children, fur babies, if you will. And I've shown in obedience, and I've been a dog breeder, and I'm just an animal person. But the bottom line to what it is I wanted to share is that today I spent a really distinctive amount of time observing the dogs with their person. I observed the people with their dogs, and I observed relationships that were pretty phenomenal. And what I would like to do is ask you, the listeners, if you would be kind enough to let me know how you feel about me doing a show on relationship with dogs, or with any animal for that matter. They can be very deep, very life transformational, and I would love to hear your feedback about what your thoughts were, or if you have some specific ideas about that, and we will produce one specifically for you.
And for me, I just wanted to mention, dogs are so unconditionally loving. Their tails are always wagging. They'll love you no matter what. And that to me is such an incredible lesson or mirror for the way we approach our relationships.
So we're going to start today with not necessarily meaning that you have to have a dog to be in a relationship. But I do want you to know that
it helps.
Sometimes it can. On the other hand, I can tell a story about that, but I won't right this minute. So what I would like to talk about is, before you get into a relationship, I know this might sound a little left brain for some of you, but let me tell you there's an important reason for this. And what I'm going to suggest today is that you don't just let your emotions be your motivation. Because what happens is, when we get into our emotions only, they will frequently be activated by our hormones. And our hormones will then tell us what it is that we're going to do, or what it wants to do. And so many times, everything that's logical or makes sense is out the window. It's gone. We don't think anymore. We're now thinking with a part of ourselves that is not going to necessarily be in your best interest. So when it comes to choosing a relationship, getting into a relationship, there's a few things that you really want to cover.
So I just have a question before you say that. We go on, are you really saying that a sexual attraction can actually throw you off in determining why or the kind of relationship you want to be in? So if you're really into or have a real attraction, is that a good or a bad thing?
It's not good or bad. It's frequently what most people will look for first. I'm attracted to that person. And yet I have found that although many of those relationships work well, I've also found that many relationships that start that way do not end so well, because there was no other thought process going on that helped them understand if they were really a good long-term fit or not. Does that make sense?
It does, but that's pretty hard, because when we, have that initial hit of attraction, how do you wait until that attraction goes down to really determine if you want to be in a relationship?
Well, from my viewpoint, and that's the only one I can give you, and some of you may choose to follow this suggestion and some of you may not, but my suggestion is that you don't jump in the sack within the first, 30 minutes, or maybe even the first night, because you want to really be able to think more clearly. And thinking more clearly means that you get to know each other. Sometimes people that are best friends make the best partners because they see how aligned they are with each other. So one of the things that you want to know is, and I'm speaking long-term relationships here. If you want to just have a one night stand, or you just want to have a sex partner, that's perfectly fine too. You get to do whatever it is you want to do. But in this particular moment, I'm speaking about somebody that you would like to spend a long period of time with, like years. And that means that there are certain things that you want to have in alignment to let me tell you, nothing guarantees a relationship is really going to work 100%, but you're going to have a much higher percentage of being in a joyful relationship if you follow some of the things that in other episodes I've actually even spoken about. And one of them is, why do you want to be in a relationship? It'd be good for you to know what you're looking for in relationship. What's your outcome? Are you looking for a long-term marriage? Are you looking for a sex partner? Are you looking for a business partner? Are you looking for what? And if you know that, you will be much more clear when you take the next step.
And I just wanted to say, Isatis and I were friends for about 10 or 12 years before the idea of a relationship ever even started to materialize. We were good friends. We helped each other in our businesses, in our work, and all those other things. And we just spent a lot of time together. And that made a big, big difference. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Well, it is. And the thing that is important is that sometimes I've had couples come to me and they come for coaching because they say, we don't have anything in common. Once the fire went out or got less, meaning the sex drive, then all of a sudden you're left with somebody who you don't have the same core values, you don't have the same interests, the same likes. And I'm not suggesting that every single thing has to be aligned, because sometimes diversity creates an interest that you can both go do your own thing, come back together and share with whatever it is that you've learned. But if there are not some very deep core principles that you're aligned with, it frequently becomes very difficult for people to get very intimate. And when I say intimate, I don't just mean sexual activity. What I'm speaking about is the intimacy of feeling safe, sharing your feelings, saying what's really, really deep and what's really going on. Because when there are many, 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 many people that are married today or partnering today, living together, but they are like roommates. They don't have sex. They don't have any alignment with their business. They don't like to do the same things. They don't like to go the same places. They don't even like the same food. I mean, it's kind of silly. But on the other hand, if they're happy doing that because they're sharing expenses, then great. But I know many people as well that not only don't have very much in common, but they don't even share expenses. They both have their own money, they keep it in separate accounts, and they might come together and do joint expenses for the mortgage and for things of that nature. So this is why I tap back into what is it that you're looking for in a relationship. And it's not to take the romanticism out, but rather to help you have the foundation that will support you and having a happy time together for however long it is you're together.
So all of those things, how can you really, is there one thing you could say that would help clarify how you really know if the partner is for you? Is it the concept of, we often hear people say, are you in love? But I can't tell you how many different definitions of love there are out there. So my question is, how do you know this is the right partner for yourself?
Well, the person that you're with is always the correct partner, but it may not be the funnest partner. It may not be the partner that you really enjoy being with all the time, and that's because we're going to go back to, I think, our first episode, maybe our second, where we spoke about relationships are personal growth activities. We really get into relationship to help ourselves grow, to learn to know ourselves, to learn how to be more patient, more loving, more unconditional, less judgmental, less blame, ultimately none of those things going on. And most people actually understand the power of that in relationship. As a result, they go into a relationship and they're looking for someone who is going to make them feel all better, take care of them, save them, whatever it is they're looking for. And when the person doesn't do that, they're pretty unhappy. And they're going to almost always blame the person who is not saving them, if you will. And so it is important to know what you're looking for, who they are, what they're like, and what's even, no pun intended, under the covers for you. I have spoken to many people, and it can be men or women, that are looking for somebody who is going to financially take care of them so they don't have to do anything. They just want to be queen for a day or king of a mountain or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're both in agreement with that. But to go in with a hidden agenda is not going to bring great results.
One of the things I wanted to bring up here was, in the Jewish religion, when you get married, you sign a ketubah or a contract. And we also have a marriage contract, a civil marriage. When we get married on a civil basis, there's a contract. So when we get into a relationship, we are entering into a contract with the other person. What, Isatis, would you say are the main points that we should be aware of in that contract?
Well, it depends on the definition of the contract you're speaking about. Not being Jewish, I have no clue what's in the contract that you're speaking about. So what I would say is that you can make a contract with a person, which is kind of like what vows are, which seem to mean little to nothing to many people. And sometimes I think it's really important. I am not an advocate of staying with someone who you are incredibly unhappy with, especially if you've gotten support and gotten clarity about it. I'm not an advocate of staying with somebody who is physically abusive, and on and on and on. There's certain things. So if you say to death to us part, so to speak, which a lot of contracts, aka vows, say, that may or may not be something that is going to be appropriate if you're being beaten up every day. So I'm not really sure what the contract thing that you're speaking about is.
To me, when I speak of that is when I make a commitment, when I made a commitment and we got married, I made a commitment for my own personal growth, to be loving, to be compassionate, to be giving. And that was the important things for me. Now, that's not to say that I didn't forget them or they didn't go away for a while and then come back, because that's just the nature of our lives. But the underlying premises that you're entering into the union or of this relationship is why and what do you want to share with your partner. That's what I mean by a contract. And I'm talking about more than sharing money and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about the values and all, and the intimacy, that you spoke about earlier.
One of the things that I would say unequivocally that is paramount is authenticity, honesty, and flexibility. Because if we can just start with those. If you are not transparent, in other words, you are not willing to share what's really going on with you, which leads right into honesty, your relationship is not going to be particularly effective, happy, joyful, and most of the time, although they can last for a while because both people can lie to each other for a long time and they live a lie. On the other hand, if you start out with what's true for you before you get married or before you get into a long-term relationship, like have a child or whether you're married or not doesn't really matter here. What is important is, who do you choose to be? Who do you choose to be with this person? What agreement are you making with yourself that would overflow into the relationship with the other person? In other words, the relationship is really about helping you learn what's important to you. So if you want to make the agreement or the contract that you will be more kind, more loving, more compassionate, the things that you just spoke about, that's really awesome because that contract is with yourself. Whether you even share that with the other person or not is relatively unimportant, although I do think that it's powerful if you do, because it's kind of like an accountability thing. It helps you make the stance and then hold up to what it is that you say that you're going to do. So contract for me is about the contract with you and how you choose to be, to live, to speak, to share, to experience in every area of your life with yourself, and allow the love that comes from love of self to overflow and be given unequivocally and without any hesitation to your partner.
And when you do those things, when you make that commitment and you have the love of self and all the things you just said, that's going to, I don't know what the right word is, wear off. That's going to be very apparent to your partner, and they will just be in the space, the energy of reciprocating without them knowing it, because they're feeling good about what you're doing and how you're being in the relationship.
It's very true. In the relationship, one of the things that's very, very important is for you to recognize that whatever it is you want in a relationship, get really clear that you be that first. You want your partner to be more loving, you be more loving first. You want your partner to be more giving, you be more giving first. You want your partner to stop criticizing you, you stop criticizing them. And here's a little caveat. People say, oh, I'm not criticizing my partner, because maybe they're not saying it out loud. But what are you doing in your mind? What are you thinking? And that's a really key piece. This is where honesty has to be with self first. So if you're judging your partner about something, anything, or a lot of things, even though you're not saying it to them, that judgment is still heard, if you will, by the quote-unquote universe. It is still going out there as an energy of attack, for lack of a better term, even though the person may never know about it on a level where they actually heard it with their ears. But we always remember that energy never leaves its source. So whenever we judge another person, we're always coming from our own self-judgment. Because we're not comfortable with it, we project it out, and then, just like a boomerang, it comes right back to you.
So what I wanted to say is that when you have that thought, that judgment is creating the lens through which you're seeing your partner.
Well, it's absolutely true. Once you start judging one thing, you will find that you're going to do that in other areas as well, because judgment is always from an energetic level, it's always a lower vibration, it's always a frequency that is low, which makes us feel low in our mood and our attitude and all of those things. And once your attitude gets low, then that means that you see things from that place, which means now suddenly something that didn't used to bother you is now going to bother you, because that's the place that you're seeing things from. And I believe that I spoke about it in another episode, where it's different lenses. It's like you take out the lenses of the rose-colored glasses, if you will, and you put in the lens of kind of like a smoky gray. So everything is seen kind of from a dismal standpoint. And once you have one judgment, you're changing your lenses to the gray, and things start being seen from a different viewpoint, even if they're not really true. But from where it is that you sit, That's all you can see. So it's incredibly important to understand, to have an awareness of when you're judging and recognizing what it's doing to you and what it's doing to your relationship long term.
It is so important, and I grapple with that, and I try to keep that in mind all the time, because sometimes our mind just goes, we don't have any control over it.
So before, I know that we're going to probably have to do questions here in a second, but one of the things that I would like to just kind of, I could really talk about this for about another hour or two, but I just want to leave some of the facts here with you from today, which is to understand why you're in a relationship, understand that authenticity and honesty, impeccability, lack of judgment, these are all really, really important. And let me tell you, you're not going to be without any judgment, because unless you're not human, and unless you are not going through the process of self-development and becoming more and more aware of who you are and what's important to you, you're going to do that. And if you have the awareness that you are judging, you then have the ability to nip it, to stop that, to really alter and learn how to deal with judgments differently than just blurting them out or feeling them internally and turning them into those dark colored glasses that we were speaking about a moment ago. And I mean, these are just some of the very basic principles, because when you use your left brain and not your hormones to make your decision, and I'm not saying exclusively, I'm not saying just because you look good on paper that you're going to be good in bed. And sex is a part of a relationship. So if you're not aligned in both departments, that's going to be not very much fun either. And it's also important to know that you have core values and that you have the connections of things that you can and would enjoy doing together. And that what are your goals in life? What are your personality goals? What are your relationship goals? Do you want children? I will tell you, when I was married before, I had already had a child, and he, to the best of my memory, because it was a long time ago, he said children were not important to him, and I said, that's really important that we talk about that, because I do not want any more children. And so it was really, it was very challenging, because after several years, like about 8 years or more, then that desire changed for him. And I want you to know there's nothing that you can do about that, because sometimes people will change when you're in a relationship. It doesn't mean that you didn't do everything right at the beginning. It means that life is a continuous adventure. It's a transformation moment by moment. And because of that, it means that you've got to have the flexibility that it takes, and do your best to work through those things and see if you can make it work with each other. But in the relationship where we were, where I was at that time, I really did not want children. And although we did not get divorced, quote unquote, because of that, it was a factor. And he ended up being with someone else and has had, I think, like 4 children or something like that. So that's very cool. He got his children, and I got to not have any more children. So we both were good with that. So that's where the honesty really comes in, and the clarity about what's important and what isn't, and speak that truth, because it will come back to bite you, I promise.
And there's one more thing to add to your summary that I've been trying to get in, but we keep going off in different directions. And that is what you need to know before you get into a relationship: change your partner. You have to understand that your partner is your partner, and no matter what you do, the change has got to come from your side.
I'm so glad that you remembered that, because that is so critical. If you go into a relationship thinking that, and believe me, I'm speaking from been there, done that in this department. I've had boyfriends, across the years, and I think, oh, he's got this going on, but I'm sure he'll change that. I won't even mention the number of women that have said, well, he does this, this, and this, and this, but I know that I'm the one for him, and so he's going to stop doing that. And I look in the eye and go, say what? That is just so not going to happen. And if they do, when it's something that's really important to them, if they do change that, they're going to resent you and be angry at you because they're going to think that you were controlling them, and you are. So when you see somebody and you are walking into a relationship or considering a relationship with them, just remember, for the most part, what you see is what you get. What you see is what you get. If you move into a relationship thinking that they're going to turn into Mr. Magnificence or the woman of your dreams when she doesn't look anything near that at the beginning, then you're tricking yourself. It's going to set you up. So please be aware that what you see is what you get. And if you use a time beforehand, before you get seriously and trained with each other, learn about each other and be open about that. I believe that I spoke on another episode where I said, when Raphael and I got together, we sat down and we spoke about it. And I said, look, I've got this issue, this is what I'm working on,
and I thought she was kidding.
And I wasn't, because I have to tell you, I know myself, and I know other people, and I know that if you don't really come into full disclosure, then it just comes up to bite you later. And that's why self-love, self-development is so critically important to me if you want to have a successful relationship with yourself first and a partner second.
Great. That was awesome. Okay, so we're going to take a short little break, and then we're going to be back with the segment of our show called Ask E. And we have a question from someone who listened to our first and second podcasts, and it's going to knock your socks off. So we'll be right back in a second. So here's the question. I just got this email the other day, and it said, oh my God, I got married 10 years ago, and I had no idea of any of the things that you've been talking about in your prior shows. What do I do now? I feel like there's so much water under the bridge. What do I do?
Well, if I had this person online with me right now, or on the phone or in person, I would say, well, what's going on now? Been 10 years. Has it been working well? From the sounds of the email, it doesn't sound like it's oh so great. But the first thing you do is you learn everything you can learn about yourself and about how a relationship really works. So keep listening to these podcasts, read things, and learn the really core principles of how you can be in a relationship that is aware and able to be shifted. The second thing, as you learn more, is to then speak with someone that might be able to support you. You get a coach. You get a person that can be completely unbiased, completely neutral about what's going on, and be able to support you both in understanding how things are perhaps needing to change, or you are desiring for them to change. And that's when you're going to need an unbiased third party to be in there to help you, because most of the time you cannot do it alone. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying if you try that, you can see how it goes, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, then you may need to get a third-party person there to help you, a coach, or someone like me, or whomever it is that you may find a connection with. But one of the things that you can do also is you can speak to your partner about that. And you can say, gosh, I'm learning so much about relationships. Would you be interested in listening to some of this with me? Invite them. Tell them that you're learning things that you never knew before and you'd like to see what their thoughts are about that, without saying, oh, you really need to listen to this because we're a mess and I'm pretty sure it's all because of you. Instead, you want to say something like, I'm really learning more about relationships and about myself. Would you be willing to listen to this with me and see what they say? And if they're not willing, and they're not willing to go to a counselor or a coach or read a book or listen to a podcast, then you need to get coaching for yourself to learn what the next best steps are.
So this is really an awareness of how much love you have for yourself to get this thing handled so you don't live and be in a state of unhappiness or inauthenticity, as you've previously spoken about.
That's true. That is very, very true. You really, you have to have the awareness, and you have to take care with awareness of yourself and be aware of the partner. And sometimes we have enough water under the bridge that we have a lot of judgments about the other person that might not even be true. It's just how we are framing them now because we have been hurt a lot, or we're really angry or whatever. It doesn't mean the other person is really at fault at all. So that's where a third-party mediator can be very, very supportive.
Does it really matter if, let's say, the couple is unaware of a lot of the things that we talked about changing someone, about all of the things that we've talked about earlier? Is it too late after, let's say, a 10-year period to really expect any kind of meaningful change?
It is very likely never too late. And a lot depends on how much water went under the bridge and how dirty it was when it went under. Because sometimes people stuff stuff for so long and it gets so ugly inside of their head that they can't undo it because they really believe what it is that they made up. And therefore, they are not seemingly able to let it go so readily. And that means that you've got to really again get some help so you can determine whether there's something that's repairable or not. And it takes only one person to get into joy, but it takes two people to be in joy together. And the two people is each person taking individual responsibility for their own joy.
And for the person who wrote this email, and I don't want to use your name for privacy purposes, but I would just like to really acknowledge that you had the courage and you had the awareness to even start to address this. So that is a huge piece. Just the awareness will start the process of, I want to say healing, but the process of coming together on a much different or higher vibrational level.
It's like change. You know, we can't expect to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So that means that we have to change some aspect of what we're thinking, doing, saying, feeling, if we want the rest of our life to change.
Yeah, that is so true. So I have one more question, and we have about 5 minutes left. So I just want, the question that we have here is, I just can't get my husband to listen to me. What should I do? Interesting how it was a husband who wasn't listening.
Well, the truth is, it's not uncommon that most of the people that we hear from are women, because women have an instinctual increased level of awareness, and they're more in touch with their feelings, so they know when they're hurting more than men do, primarily. Not always, certainly, but there is kind of a propensity for women to feel things a little bit more than men. So you Would you read it to me one more time or say it to me?
It's really simple. She said, I just can't get my husband to listen to me.
Ah.
What should I do?
Well, again, I'd like to ask you some questions. So it's like, how much have you tried? Are you asking him to listen to you and he's not listening because you're saying, do this, do that. This is what you have to do. This is what you didn't do right. This is, on and on and on. They usually learn, doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, you're going to tone out that person. And that is not going to make it so easy to get any rational information back. On the other hand, if you are really coming from a place of, for lack of a better term, wimpiness, and you're going, honey, if you get around to it, would you mind doing it? In other words, you come from a really weak place with no clarity. That also will turn people's hearing aids off because they're not feeling the strength and they're not being pulled into whatever it is that you're saying because there's no power there. So what's important is to communicate in a way that is clear, it's strong but not violent or loud, but rather this is my opinion, or this is what it is that I think about this. Remember that many times we give advice and suggestions and all of this even when somebody doesn't ask for them or doesn't want it. And then we can't understand why they won't listen to us. Well, they didn't really want to hear from you, thank you very much. And therefore, they're going to literally tune you out. So what you do is that you have the person sit down, have their their uninterrupted focus with you, and you ask them, I have this thing going on, I'd like to bring it up to you and I'd like your feedback about it. How's that sound to you? And they're going to say, usually, yes. And when you do that, you sit there and you say to them, I'm feeling really frustrated because I feel like I say things to you, but I feel like you never hear me, you never listen to me. And I would like your feedback as to why that is happening like that. And they may say, I don't like your tone of voice. They may say, you're always jabbering and wanting something. They may say, I don't understand half the things you say. They may say, whatever. So they're going to come up with something that will help you, first of all, get a clue. Why are they not listening?
And we will be talking a lot more about this, the art of communication, and how imperative it is to have that communication from the right energy and from the right energetic place. And that will be volumes of subjects in and of itself. But communication is vital, and we'll have a lot more to say about that. Just one little tip that Isa Tees uses with me, and I thought when she wants me to do something, she doesn't say, will you please do this? She said, are you willing to do this? And the whole energy of that changes. You want to just quickly comment on that?
I've found that to be a lot more inviting for people. The other thing it does is it puts somebody into a yes or no place. It's not like you're not telling them what to do, but you ask, are you willing to do this? So they're either going to say yes or no. And because by nature, we really do want to help each other because we're kind in our hearts by nature. So if someone comes up and says, are you willing to do this, or will you help me with this, it's really hard for me personally to say no. And so I will do it. But if I really don't want to, or I really feel like I'm not going to be the best person for that, I will say, I'm not the best person for you for that. Or let's just say that somebody comes up and asks you for something after you just had this blowout. Well, you can be very honest with them and say, I'm still processing over the last conversation we had, so the answer right this minute is no. You can try me later after I've settled down, but I'm not really available. So that's an honest answer rather than looking like you don't care. be really transparent.
And honest.
Honesty is imperative.
Right. Okay. Well, I would just like to request, thank you for those 2 questions that we got. I would like to request anyone listening to this, if you have a question that you would like addressed, please send us an email to isatis@isatis.com, or there'll be a link below this this audio for you to send in a comment, or a question rather. We'd like comments as well, so that we can address the issues that are important to you. So please, 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 anything that comes up for you, send it our way and we'll do our best to answer it. And now the last part of the show, which is living in the world of possibility. And Isatis has Isatis creates questions for how to open up the energy to create or to bring in whatever it is that's being requested. So today we are asking, what will it take for me to have the most awesome relationship?
When you ask yourself, what will it take for me to have the most awesome relationship beyond whatever I could dream or imagine, I always like to add that on. What occurs is the mind, and I've said this before, it's like a Google search engine. It goes out and it starts picking up the answers to that and will bring that answer to you. You'll meet a certain person, you'll do a certain thing, you'll buy a certain book, you'll do whatever that will lead you closer and closer to the most awesome relationship you could ever dream or imagine. And when you do it that way, it's so powerful because you're not trying to control the results, you're allowing the universe to support you what is in your very best interest.
So it literally is being in the world of possibility rather than the world of controlling, as you just said.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's been very powerful. We recently have had some of our own experiences where we do these questions all the time, and we have had sometimes the answers don't come right away. Sometimes they come immediately, sometimes it takes a little bit. But we know that it's just so incredibly powerful that those requests, those answers will come. And they will be very, very powerful for you. So in closing, there's one other thing. We have a very special ebook that Isatis recently completed called the eight Signs That Your Relationship Is in Trouble. And it is a free ebook. At the bottom or somewhere on this page, there will be a link for you to request that. Just send in your email. We'll be happy to send that to you. It is a very, very powerful checkup for what's going on in your relationship. And I'm not meaning, and when Isatis wrote this, it wasn't really meaning to be a negative thing, but it's really an awareness. When we see and have those awarenesses that these issues may or may not be occurring in our relationship, then we can do something about it. So very powerful, it's free, and we really would love for you to download it and, more importantly, give us your feedback. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I'm excited. I encourage you, I probably always say this, but I always encourage people to listen to these at least twice, because I know that when I listen to something at least twice and I take notes on it, it becomes so much more ingrained in me that, and it makes it so I can follow the guidance that is given in there, or at least stay open to the suggestions that are given. But there's so much that happens in an hour or less that it's really hard to remember all of those details.
And when you listen to it a second time, you'll be in a different place. So you'll hear things differently. You'll hear things a second time, or even a third time if you get there, that you never heard before, and will be perfect for you based on the place you're in. And the last thing to say with regard to that, if you can get your partner to listen to these, Go for it.
It's all the better. It's really, really, you can do these things together. It will make a very significant difference in your relationship.
A lot of times what Isatis and I do when we're riding in the car together, we'll throw on either one of our Isatis' programs or one of her podcasts or one of her radio shows, and we listen to it together. And you know, there's only a certain amount of basic knowledge that we will impart. It's in the listening that the miracles occur, and that depends on where you are.
Thank you everyone for being here with us today. It's always so fun to be with you and to feel you out there, knowing that you are really committed to making a difference in your life and the life of other people. And we appreciate you for that. We appreciate you being here with us, and we look forward to having you be with us the very next time.
And until next time, we will see you soon, and know that we are we love you guys.
Yeah, so feel a hug. We'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye.